And we want to welcome Zefire today, who's going to talk about returning to campus, best practices, and what she's learned, tips, ideas. She always has lots of ideas. So thank you for coming, Zefire.
You're welcome. Hey, thanks for having me. I was hoping that today could be somewhat of a discussion, and I most definitely welcome everybody's ideas. So please do share. I realize it's quite a small group. I took some notes, but I didn't create a PowerPoint or anything. So if anybody wants any notes to go along with this, I would be happy to share. I am first going to use the chat very briefly to share my pronouns because it seems that only 3 people on campus so far have thus attempted my pronouns, despite them being in my email and Canvas and everywhere else. So my preferred pronouns are Z, their, and them. And the reason I chose Z is because it's the letter of my first name, and my friends often call me Z anyway. So it's a nice, easy to remember version of a non-binary gender fluid pronoun. So Z's class was so awesome is a great example of how to use Z in a sentence. So there you go. It's not she. So thank you. I appreciate your attempts, and I realize it takes practice, and I would much rather hear you say she and then correct yourself and say, sorry, Z, and that'll just be lovely. I'll be delighted, and you'll make my day, and that'll warm my heart. I appreciate it. So, yeah, when I was invited to talk about this was after, I had been to open forums and regarding to return to campus and return to campus was, understandably and still is, the talk and planning. And I just thought that, there's quite a few of us that have been on campus all year, and that perhaps we might have something that we might have learned by being on campus all year that we might be able to share. And of course, we're all learning and adjusting so much during COVID, and how myself in a hybrid program, having necessary labs all year, and what that looked like this year in this year's context of COVID. Of course, there's going to be shifts for everybody on campus, what that's going to look like next year. I mean, we probably all saw the new CDC guidelines and the Washington state and all the states making adjustments because of that. And so, I mean, obviously, things are changing. And so it's not that my exact protocol for this past year are going to be exactly what you do, but that hopefully, there's some ideas for those of us who have been on campus, or anybody who has questions, concerns, ideas, that would be great to share. So does that bring up anything right away? Ideas?
This is Sarah Newman, and thank you for that. I've only been to campus 3 times since I was hired, so I know
Oh my God.
it turned out that way. But it's beautiful campus, and I was really excited to be there, and I'm looking forward to coming back more often. One of the things that the CITL team was looking into and talking about is how to raise other options for attending. And Liz, I don't know how much you heard, but Jan and I were having a good time talking about and figuring out how we're going to demonstrate what we're calling a campfire communication ring. But Jan can talk about that more. But thank you for this.
Very cool. Thank you. And by the way, I think you all know, because it's a small campus and a small group, that I'm the massage therapy instructor. And I'm calling that out right now because I'm having horrible posture. And the reason is that I'm dodging the sunlight. So I'm trying to give the shadiest view of at least my eyes, I guess. Maybe so you can see my eyes. So I'm gonna be dodging around here. Okay, so I know we don't have a lot of time, but feel free to, of course, speak up anytime, share ideas. You can raise your hand or just speak up, use the chat. I can see the chat right now. So quick thing about the massage therapy program that is relevant to today's discussion is that prior to, COVID and only required labs being allowed on campus, I had already hybridized the program. And to some extent, that was advantageous because I had already done a lot of instructional design for the online elements. But like everybody on campus, there was still a lot to adjust and change and learn. And, I've learned and am still learning a lot about the flex model. And that has been one of the most helpful things, I think, for my students. I know that thoughtful, skilled instructors, as you all are, one of the most important things I think is that we are continually reflective about our practices and intentional about our practices. And while we all, of course, made a lot of adjustments when we first had to leave campus, I think, since those were forced, I think we all kind of found ways that we could be creative that we didn't even think were possible about how to, meet the outcomes and support our students and still create community or support community with our students. And I guess one thing I would just like to really encourage, because I know it can especially be difficult in a campus that runs so lean, where we all have to do so much, is to really take time to still step back and reflect and not feel like, since we're going back or are likely to go back, that we kind of have to go back to the way we used to do things. I think we can take all the lessons we've learned thus far and continue in the direction of being very intentional about, how we do things and what changes we make. And we all have our strategies that work well. And Alma used the phrase the other day, unplug. And I'd like to, and I'm also an acupuncturist with my master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine. And in 5-element theory, there's this idea about flowing through the cycles of the seasons, and that these, each season, has these developmental characteristics and in ways that are not just relevant to the seasons that we're experiencing, but seasons in relationship to projects and thinking. And so I'd like to bring that concept to the floor with regards to return to campus, in that it requires that stepping back and reflective period that sometimes seems, quiescent, or that nothing is actually happening, right? And it's been my experience that in developing all these new ways of doing things and new policies and procedures, that I personally have found it very tiring and very taxing emotionally and mentally, and that to give ourselves permission to step back. And, for me, that is best in nature and I'm very grateful and lucky to live next to woods. So taking walks in the woods and gardening, and I also farm, and that a lot of my best thoughts come from that place. So that's one thing I would like to welcome before moving to more specific. And at that point, I'd like to again open the floor if there's any additional ideas or things you want to share at that point. All right. So I mentioned that my program was already hybridized because, some of what I have learned that's been helpful has been from already doing hybrid. And some of what I have learned has been from the context of hybrid and flex in COVID, and directly being on campus. And so, I think there's probably going to be more hybrid and more flex than there was before COVID. And of course, every course of study, class, and program is obviously going to have different needs. But some of them are, of course, similar because of the populations and the students we shared. Good morning. Aloha. It's great to see you, Warren. And so one of the things that I really agree with the saying of hybrid is the best of both worlds. And one of the ways that I think I have found very helpful supporting my students in the hybrid model is that, of course, a lot of our students have, tech issues. And I find especially with a new group of students, a new cohort, needing to learn Canvas and even how to find their assignments and how to upload things and all of that. And so I find that in the hybrid model, actually taking the class time of when we're physically together to support the students is invaluable in especially the first month, to help them really make the best use of their Canvas and all the resources on campus, right? Like if they need the laptop loaner program and so forth. Does that bring up anything for anybody they want to share at this point, or questions, comments? Because I know we have other hybrid folks here, and I just have one little slice of knowledge coming at you from massage therapy, but there's a lot of knowledge.
Warren has his hand up
in the house. Oh, thank you. I didn't see it. Yeah, Warren.
So, being hybrid mode, when students come in, I hear from them personally that they appreciate the opportunity to have the lessons loaded and available online so that they're able to reference it. And what I see happening, especially for like a trade courses or technical course, students end up referring back to the lessons while they're working in the face-to-face labs. And so I see them pulling out their phone or their little tablet and they're looking at the videos that we posted there. And then they're doing the lab alongside. Because in the past, that wasn't, I guess, readily available when we do face-to-face, because we go over it first and then we go straight into the lab. But now it's available for a reference.
Thank you, Warren. And yeah, that's something that I see of great value to my students as well, posting all the videos online. And then I actually build them into the Canvas modules as well, so that they can have that sort of front-loaded information, but then also, get that support directly in lab and then afterwards as well. I will share a little snippet from my YouTube page, with an example that's more directly related to something that I learned from having to move some of my classes, fully online during Canvas. Thank you, Warren. And anybody else at this point?
Hi, it's Sarah again. I was just going to reflect that I have been in 2 Zoom meetings for the last 2 days that were full day, and you mentioned the posture and yes, and then the wellness thing that went out from the iPad team that is now posted today with the whole stretching and so forth. But one of the things that those Zoom state board meetings, they always began with these gentle kindness and reminders and just kind of what's the word, when you open and check in with people's emotions and feelings first, and it makes sure that everybody is able to hear and to communicate, because I think as teachers we're in a hurry to get to the subject as quickly as possible. But it did settle me in better, because I always thought, oh God, here goes another full day. But the kindness that it opened with was really beneficial for me, and remembering to stretch.
That's
The other
beautiful.
thing,
Thank you for sharing, Sarah.
thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention was I've been running into students who are having they're having technical issues, and so when they try to take something after something's been due, some teachers have struggled with understanding the settings of their Canvas assignments, and they'll be putting in, you know how it says it's due on such a date, but then there's two more options below, the from and until. We need people to take the until off because it's preventing students from being able to move forward with work when it's modularly and linearly, is that a word? Set to help students who have technical issues continue to do the work. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for sharing two awesome points. And regarding the check-in and, also stretching, meditations, so forth, taking time for that in Zoom. I've also done Zoom polls like that at the beginning of the class with sort of different versions of check-ins. And I don't know why it surprised me, but the first time that I saw how many people hadn't even eaten breakfast yet sort of surprised me. And then just kind of like, check-ins like on a 1 to 10 scale where they were doing and if they had gotten enough sleep last night and things like that. And it was good to get like a litmus test of where they were at and take that affective time as well. Thank you for sharing. So this next, I want to start getting into some flex stuff and of course, definitely give, a lot of us who I see here, I don't know who's going to watch the recording, already, studying flex and know about, this little class on flex. I love the new additions to the flex class, like Yoon's model on, the tech aspects of flex. So if you haven't checked out the additions or the class at all, I recommend that. But I want to talk about, not just the instructional design elements of flex, but really about different policies and procedures that some of us already have in place, and that maybe we have more. Could take some space to kind of reflect upon if there's room for any change with that. And specifically, I'm actually going to reference a book that we had a kind of RTC book club around once called Cheating Lessons that some of you may remember, that kind of, was research backed, evidence-based, that really supported ideas, that I had already had, but it was interesting to see different research around, the general synopsis or gist of it is that, with high stakes, high stakes at play, people will do what it takes, right, to work the system. And I think in terms of, we've talked about low stakes assessments, formative assessments, but I think in the context of equity and in the context of a health crisis, that those high stakes also, most definitely involve, straight up attendance and how or when the students are able to participate in things, and in massage therapy, I think is a great example, because we have a lot of tech programs on campus, whether they're healthcare or other areas where, yes, labs are essential, so, but that doesn't mean that it is essential that all of my students attend lab at the same time, at the same place. And if they have to miss lab because of illness or family illness or childcare issues or, the many reasons our students can't always come to class, that's it, right? That they miss that module. And, I hear teachers sometimes say, well, but either that was the way that they were taught or that students used to be able to learn in this way, or that, they're never going to survive in such and such industry if they don't know how to show up to work on time and always be there, and so forth. But I think that we're setting students up for failure, are being inequitable, and also asking for people to really come in when they shouldn't, if we don't have our policies and procedures set up. So just as an example, of course, we all have to do a little bit different. Thanks, Warren. Woohoo! Of course, we all have to do a little differently depending on whether we have any adjunct support folks in our area, what deliverables we have, how much access we have to our labs, accreditation factors, like many factors at play. But for example, we now have policies and procedures, and we always had makeup policies and procedures in place, but now we've made it so that students can 100%, no points deducted, no percentage deducted, makeup class and have full participation, whether they missed a Zoom or whether they missed a lab. And yay, thanks, Sarah. And of course, we do recordings of things and ways to support that, so that the teachers aren't having to reteach everything, but then we make plenty of support times available. So quickly on lab and then quickly on Zoom. For lab, we have the opportunity to do makeup labs before and after class, and they just schedule, and so we do that. And then for Zooms, of course, we record them, but then also one thing that we found very helpful, and I'd love to hear from other folks here, because I'm sure folks are doing a lot of interesting things, is that I make sure to take screenshots and notes of basically everything we do for the day. So if there's a Zoom poll, I take a screenshot of it. If there's a breakout discussion, then there's clear deliverables for that, and all the directions are there, so that or if we play Quizlet live, or all the learning activities, everything's there in Canvas, so that the student can meet the learning outcomes, even if they're not there. So that seems like a great time to open up the floor again. Any ideas? Yes, Dawn.
Yeah, I think a couple things. I really appreciate what you are saying, and I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how labs are made up. But it also brought a question up to me that I've really been thinking a lot, and about, in CCP, our standard end of the quarter assessments have been kind of a national computer-based assessment, which, everyone has different opinions on that, right? But we haven't been able to do that because of COVID. And so I think your idea about really stepping back and reflecting is so important, to think about what are the appropriate ways to be assessing, right, online. And, who knows if we will go back to this national assessment. I think a lot of people are hoping that we don't. But I know some people have kind of turned to, okay, I'm just going to have a quiz in Canvas, and that's how I'm going to assess. And so I think asking these questions, is that really appropriate? Is that the right way to assess? I don't know how successful I have been. I've been moving more into the direction of projects that I think are, there's a certain element of choice, and students are able to select certain topics. And so hopefully it's something that's more meaningful to them, but I also get a more kind of a fuller picture of their skills. And so maybe this is more of a question or a comment to see what other people are doing, but that this idea of assessment, what is really useful and appropriate to our students now that we're online and that we're going to Flex. And in my mind, it's not the traditional assessment, but I don't know how much we've really thought about that and thought about different ways we might move forward.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing all those ideas up about assessment, Dawn. And I'd like to share a few things and then, of course, see if anybody else has any other ideas or comments or how they're doing things. I appreciate that you're being thoughtful about, is this the best way to assess them, and also bringing up, what is of interest to them. And, I like the UDL, Universal Design and Learning ideas around different types of assessment. But I also appreciate that you brought up a national exam, and I see at least one other healthcare person in the house. And like my students, they have to take a national exam to become licensed, and that is all multiple choice. So in addition to doing assessments that really prepare them for the field and practice of doing massage, I also have to prepare them for the national exam assessment. And so I'm kind of, doing both of those things to make sure at the end of the day they can also pass a multiple choice exam written in a certain format, even if that is not the, really, even an appropriate or equitable type of exam. Yeah. Anyone else want to share ideas about assessment?
This is Sarah Newman.
Sarah has her hand up. Yes, Sarah?
I'm going to put in the chat a reminder of, while maybe academic integrity, maybe we should label it slightly different. The whole topic about how data is being used and assessment, it all kind of muddies, I think, for us as instructors, who's our audience, what's our goal, what's our intention. It is to make sure that what we're teaching is moving along in a formative way, helping us not wait till the end to see whether they got it, but engaging them. And so I think I would love to see more assessment ideas added. Get all the iPads and all of you guys, past and current iPads, and anybody else, to continue to contribute to this great list of ideas that you guys have been sharing with all of us on how to engage our students so that they're succeeding every week, not, oh gosh, we're midterm, let's find out if they're dealing with it. But I'm going to add to the to the chat, the link to, it's called Academic Integrity, but there's so much more. And I'd love to see you guys help all of us with the different ways you guys are engaging our students. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Leah has her hand up too.
I'm sorry, who?
Leah and Warren.
Okay. So Leah and then Warren. I didn't see who's went up first.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that, Zephyr, the national exam. I struggle with that. I just took an educational measurement class, and really multiple choice is not the greatest way to assess student learning. But I struggle with how to best prepare them for the national exam, because multiple choice test taking is a skill. And so really that's part of the problem, right? It's a skill to be able to take the test, and it doesn't necessarily always, depending on the type of questions you're making and how they're worded, they're not necessarily assessing learning appropriately. So I've been trying, well, I haven't yet because it's time consuming, but I want to try to add a little bit more like short answer stuff to really get to the critical thinking part of the field. But yeah, I struggle with that too, to kind of figure out ways to prepare them appropriately for the national exam.
Thank you, Leah, and I agree that is also a skill. I see at least 2 or 3 more folks in order. If I might just quickly add that directly to the critical thinking, Leah, I'm imagining that you do some forms of this already, and we can always, of course, talk offline about it in healthcare. But as sort of separate from the multiple choice preparation, I build in case study practice as well, and some of that as online discussions, and really scaffold that so their first case studies are in their first quarter are very, very basic, and by third quarter, they're doing, full treatment planning, case studies. One more quick idea that I've shared before and Liz has put in various courses that I just really enjoy as a frequent formative assessment, and you're welcome to borrow or use the title if you enjoy it. I use what I call CYUs, which are check your understanding, and they're just quick little 1 to 2 to 3 at most 3 questions that I insert at multiple places in a module. So if I scaffold a little concept, then there's quick little CYUs after that they can turn in as many times as they want to practice. Let's see, it's Warren, then Alma. Oh, thanks, Warren.
Yeah, so even like for myself in the automotive program, we have a national exam too. It's all multiple choice. And but the disturbing part is the national exam puts distractors in. So like they have distractor questions that look correct, but that's not the right answer.
Our
And
national test does that too, and I think it's a terrible way to test. That's not how I want to test my students.
yeah, and so thinking about the way we teach, like I feel that maybe we need more, or the faculty would need more training in like curriculum development, because to be kind of intentional about designing lessons to create formative assessments, as we go along the way. Because I like what you folks mentioned, that we shouldn't wait for the midterm or the final to kind of find out if they know enough to pass the national exam for that certain area of study. But I think it'll take a lot of intentional curriculum development to kind of design lessons that really give us an opportunity and the student an opportunity to kind of see what they know at that point.
I appreciate you sharing that idea. I think it's a great one, Warren, and kind of related, but a little bit different is that I think that really test writing is a skill as well. And for those of us that are preparing our students for a multiple choice national exam that has distractor questions, that training in that would be good too, writing that type of assessment. Yeah. Alma.
Zefire, I appreciate you so much. Everything you say is like I echo, like it's like I know that you are doing it. There are a few things that I learned from you. One is the CYU, but I noticed my students were having a hard time understanding what that meant. So instead of calling it check your understanding, is practice, practice, practice.
Oh, I like that.
So that was easier for them to grasp that they could do it.
I love that, Alma. I have like in the 9-month program, like 500 CYUs I would have to change to practice, 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 but I love that.
But I think it's a matter of getting used to the students getting used to the vocabulary. Mm-hmm. It was just hard for me to answer the same question over and over, but I know for sure that model works. So it's funny because when Warren was talking about the distractors, that's what I was going to comment. The GED has the same structure where there are 4 answers and one is like very close to the real answer. So what I've been doing is teaching them how to read using the reading apprenticeship model of the golden rule. But I also teach them to think critically. Instead of providing the answers, instead of having them answer, I let them choose the question to the answer. Mm-hmm. So that way they, instead of thinking from the question's perspective, they will be thinking on this is the answer to what question. And that's another trick that I am using to train them to learn how to ask critical questions themselves.
Thank you, Alma. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm in the 3rd quarter of a 3-quarter program, so I'm actually actively helping my students prepare for their exam right now. And every week on Zoom, I help them with their test prep. So I'm gonna use some reading apprenticeship strategies. Thank you.
So can I add one more thing about projects? And this is a question for you, Zefire, and probably along with the comment of Don. When we use projects, and I know you do that too, it's so much time consuming because every student perceives the project in different ways, and sometimes you end up having a totally different project than what you were expecting. Sometimes it's in a positive way, and sometimes it's not. How do we reduce the amount of time we spend reviewing the end result? I know that you use scaffolding, but that again is time consuming too. So I wonder if there is a way um, to spend less time reviewing each detail on those projects, especially when you have 35 students in the room.
Yeah, such a good point and question. I think that would be a great sort of question to really crowdsource the knowledge and experience on campus. I definitely don't feel like I'm the expert on that, but I've heard some faculty do some great work around peer review that could be part of making some of that assessment not all on the teacher's shoulders, but of course making sure you see enough of it to really support the student. So maybe some peer review might be part of the solution. I want to share one more thing and then open up the floor again because I see we only have 4 more minutes. I believe we only go till 9:15. Yeah.
We sometimes run over a little bit, but yes.
Okay, I'm loving this discussion, and I just want to share something really remarkable to you because I often prepare too much. We are literally down to my last point. How crazy is that? How did I time it right?
Perfect. And Beatrice has a question too.
Oh yeah,
when you have time.
Just go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that in the field of early childhood education, really many times there is no right or wrong answer. It's really open, and the way that people approach early childhood education is very dependent on culture and background and even language. So I always highlight in my course that we have a very diverse student body, and it's really interesting to hear about different practices and bringing it in. At the same time, it makes assessment a little bit harder for me because how do I really measure if students learn or reach course outcomes? Quizzes many times do not apply because it will limit the answers too much. So as Alma said, I use a lot of reading strategies like the evidence log, really to have students look at videos, webinars, or articles and then share back like golden lines, but also looking at how they would apply it. I also start to use more often SMART goals with them, have them develop their own SMART goals or have them develop lesson plans. So I kind of try to move more into the direction of reflection and making connections and how they actually could use it. But yes, assessment sometimes is a little bit hard.
Yeah, such good points. Thank you. And in these national tests, it's you know, we have ethics areas that they, of course, turn into right answers, right? Even though some of it is cultural and not really a right answer. Even though there are, of course, healthcare standards and some of the things like scope of practice and confidentiality and so forth, but other aspects, we're taking what really doesn't have one right answer and saying, yeah, this is the right answer. So, all right, so I'm going to screen share for my last idea here. I just want to also bring to the floor for, you know, those of us and just speaking for myself of this past year when we have had all of our required labs on campus, but everything else online. One of the things that's made me really think about very carefully is what is absolutely required hands-on and how to move the things that I had done in the classroom online. And I know everyone on campus has been thinking about how to move things online, but when you're then starting to think about what would be better on campus and what can be done online, I think is where a lot of folks are going to be going next who haven't already had labs. So this is one of the examples that I'm proud of, is that we used to do, because the massage therapists have to learn almost all of the muscles in the body in great detail, exactly where they start, exactly where they go, fiber direction, all their actions. And we would sculpt the muscles on these models in the classroom, which would give them a very kinesthetic feel and the layers of the muscles and the three-dimensionality, etc. We couldn't do that during COVID, and so I found the most affordable models. They were only $30 that still had great anatomical detail, and we started doing that remotely. That's one of the things we do in Zoom. And like all teaching, right, it's a process. Like it was a great idea, but to like really make it work well, honestly took a whole quarter for me to get really good at it. And learning that, you know, doing it with the students, not that they had to stay right with me, but that doing it with them and then also recording it and posting it was helpful. Here's just a tiny snippet of an example of the use of a document camera in this way, which I set up at home. And so here we have a model. I'm actually going to turn this volume down. Here we have a model of a sacrum and a pelvis, and I'm going to kind of zoom ahead just to show you how I will actually build the muscles with the students and reference their textbook and highlight massage related facts as we move along. Right there, I'm sculpting actually a ligament and so forth. So that I bring this one up again as an example of, I think a lot of folks are going to be still doing more remotely perhaps than they did before, and to strategize about, you know, what is on campus and what is remotely. So yeah, does this bring up any other questions, comments, ideas? Oh, that's a cool idea, Warren. I like that.
It's kind of a leap, like you're doing it with them together virtually. It's like everyone together. It's
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Quick question.
I really enjoyed it too. Sorry, I really enjoyed it too, because when we would do it in the classroom, I would spend so much time walking around helping people that I hadn't sculpted the muscles in years, and it was actually really fun to do it with them. Yeah.
How long does it take you to build or to create these videos?
Well, that one that you just saw was just a Zoom recording in class that I used the share screen, advanced camera, advanced import camera, document camera. So it is as easy as recording a Zoom recording. The only thing different is at the end I uploaded it to YouTube.
That's your next session, how to do that.
I guess my biggest tip around it, which I did learn with a little bit of practice, is to make it faster and easier. I do recommend that if you do have discrete segments that really are a useful video in themselves, like now we're going to sculpt the muscles, I would stop and start the recording so that I wouldn't have to edit in YouTube, which I found to be time consuming. So there might be a Zoom recording where I had 2 discrete segments. There might be a Zoom recording where I had 4 discrete segments, and that was helpful. So technically we're out of time. I hear that we run over sometimes. Are there any other ideas or questions?
This is so inspiring, Zephyr.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate how much everybody's bringing to the table and ideas and questions. I know there aren't always a lot of people at Faculty Fridays, and I wasn't sure what to expect. So I'm really enjoying that this is a really great discussion. Thank you, everybody.
I'm going to stop the recording and then we can just go ahead and